Good fences make good neighbors. This is not just a saying, but an inescapable truth of the human condition. When the Berlin Wall was brought down, the idea of enforced separation was dismissed as something from the past. In practice, however, it is the exact opposite. Divided: Why We Are Living in an Age of Walls by Tim Marshall explores how societies have responded to the changes brought by globalization and how each nation tries to maintain a sense of national identity. I'm your host Shirvan and welcome to a Caspian Report review for the bookshelf. Tim Marshall is a journalist with more than 2 decades of experience. He was the diplomatic editor for Sky News, and before that, he was a commentator for the BBC. Over the course of his career, Marshall covered a dozen conflict zones, and according to his biography, he has been shot with a bird pellet in Cairo, hit over the head with a plank of wood in London, bruised by the police in Tehran, arrested by Serbian intelligence, detained in Damascus, declared persona non grata in Croatia, bombed by the RAF in Belgrade, and tear-gassed all over the world. Marshall is also the author of 5 books, including Prisoners of Geography, which we did a review for in 2016. And much like his previous works, Divided offers a fresh way of looking at the world, this time along enforced separations such as barriers, fences, and walls. Now, such divisions have existed since the dawn of civilization, as is evident by Hadrian's Wall, the Western Wall, the Great Wall of China, the walls of Babylon, the walls of Troy, etc. The point is that barriers are an integral part of human history, yet in the 21st century, the construction of walls has been taken to a whole new level. And despite globalization, improved tools of communication, and technological advances, thousands of kilometers of fences, barriers, and walls have been built across the globe. More than a third of the world's independent nations have constructed barriers along their borders. Thus, as the title of the book suggests, we are living in an age of walls. These barriers, which come in all shapes and sizes, determine not just our political realms but also our national identities. At heart, this is what Divided is about. In 8 chapters on China, the United States, Israel and Palestine, the Middle East, the Indian subcontinent, Africa, Europe, and the United Kingdom, Marshall explores the physical, religious, ethnic, and economic fault lines that divide communities and fuel nationalism and identity politics. An early chapter on the United States examines Trump's proposal by the Mexican border. Here, the author explains that the wall is unlikely to curb down illegal immigration. Or, as the former Secretary of Homeland Security eloquently put it, show me a 50-foot wall and I'll show you a 51-foot ladder. Yet, regardless of its effectiveness, Trump's proposal for the wall gives the impression that something is being done. The book goes into some of the details of the 200 submissions for the wall, but it raises an even more important point regarding the motive for the construction. The author argues that Trump's wall sits at the heart of the American identity. Those who oppose it claim that it goes against American values of freedom, liberty, equality, and an America for all. On the other hand, those who approve of the wall claim that they seek to protect those very values from outside forces. Besides the conflicting interpretations, enforced separations, with which our world is rife with, also stand as testaments to humanity's failure to resolve its differences. Yet the construction of walls is not a practice that is unique to wealthy industrialized nations. The pattern of fear and preservation emerges all over the book. In Africa, for example, Morocco has constructed a berm of sand in the Western Sahara to contain sectarian sentiment, while South Africa has millions of residents living in gated communities because of the high level of crime across the country. At the same time, in the Nigerian city of Lagos, certain portions have been walled off for the local wealthy upper classes. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, there are walls, fences, and barriers along the borders of Iraq, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. More strikingly are the slices of concrete between Israel and the West Bank, which the author says is necessary for now to contain the violence. Yet the book also looks beyond physical walls. Surprisingly, Divided also considers social, ethnic, and cyber divisions. In the Middle East, the author argues that a wall between religion and politics is necessary. Meanwhile, in India, the caste system, which is interpreted as a wall between classes, is steadily diminishing across the country due to urbanization and secular education. An even more imposing non-physical division can be found in China, where the Great Wall is overshadowed by the Great Firewall. This sophisticated form of internet censorship keeps roughly 750 million internet users segregated from foreign media. At the same time, there are internal firewalls that restrict the access of users with one another. For example, internet access in the region of Xinjiang is isolated from the rest of China in order to suppress the local separatist tendencies. The author goes into the details of each subject and clarifies the situation from the viewpoint of those who construct the divisions and those who are kept out. For instance, in China, swift economic advances have aggravated economic disparity across the country. As a result, the Communist Party fears that social media could be used to organize like-minded segments to demonstrate. And even though the Great Firewall restricts the country's economic and intellectual potential, the ruling party is willing to pay that price to maintain power and national unity. The final two chapters are quite memorable. They focus on mass immigration in continental Europe and the United Kingdom and explain why the new barriers are unlikely to halt the flow of people. The core problem, in a nutshell, is that as long as money does not move to where people reside, many will seek to relocate to places where there is an abundance of capital. Marshall points out that even though poverty is shrinking on a global scale, the birth rates are just too high for sustainable growth. In Africa, the population is expected to double to 2.4 billion people in just 30 years. This means that in spite of the educational and economic advances, more people are likely to be trapped in poverty. Resources are stretched thinly, and this ever-growing group of people will have slim opportunities to change their circumstances. As such, many will seek their fortunes elsewhere. However, the flow of migrants has triggered a sense of anxiety among the host nations. In Europe, many communities feel that their identity, prosperity, and stability is threatened by the newcomers. As such, they seek to protect what is theirs. Without making a case for or against immigration, Divided reveals that as more people are trapped in poverty, the wave of migrants is likely to continue in the foreseeable future. In response, the host nations will set up even more sophisticated barriers with even more violent attempts to halt the flow of migrants. So essentially, without a greater redistribution of wealth, inequality will continue to move people. This philosophic undertone displays the predicament of immigration in our globalized world. It also leaves the reader thinking about concepts like nation-states and national identities. If you're seeking to learn more about identity politics, Divided by Tim Marshall is a timely and compelling source. It's relatively short but highly informative. It is packed with valuable insight, and if you have ever read the work of the author before, you will immediately recognize his well-balanced writing style. Some chapters seem a bit rushed, but that's mostly because the topic at hand is so intriguing. Now, if you want to purchase the book, check out our Amazon shop. Items that are acquired there will not cost you extra, but it will allow us to earn a small fee. The link to the book will be in the description. I have been your host Shirvan from Caspian Report. This review was made possible by our contributors who give us the means to research and produce content like this. If you want to see Caspian Report remain independent from outside forces, please consider joining our community on patreon.com/Caspian Report. There you can pledge funds of your choosing for every published report. Even the smallest pledge helps to keep this channel self-sustained. For now, thank you for watching and Sarol.